It began the day someone disappeared in the ditch. Ash Creek was a small town nobody cared about. No one visited. No one moved in. It was the kind of place where time moved slower, where everyone knew each other's names and secrets. But one secret had been buried deep beneath the surface, right behind the old elementary school. The ditch. Everyone knew about it. Every kid had dared someone else to go near it, to touch the rusted fence that tried, but failed, to keep people out. Some said it was just an old drainage trench. Others whispered about things moving at night, wet slapping sounds, whispering voices that didn't belong to anyone alive. It was a legend until last summer. 17-year-old Alex Monroe had vanished after a graduation party. Last seen drunk, stumbling toward the field behind Ash Creek Elementary. Some friends said he went to the ditch on a dare. Some said he was crying before he left. No one knew for sure, but what they did know was that he never came back, and no one ever searched the ditch, not officially. The police wrote it off as a runaway. His mother moved away 6 months later, unable to look at the back field without breaking down. His name faded into whispered regrets and stale Facebook memorials. But for Liam Carter, Alex's best friend, the story had never ended. Now it was the next summer, 1 year to the day, and Liam was standing at the edge of the ditch. "Come on, man," Carter said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "We shouldn't be here." Liam ignored him, gripping the rusted chain-link fence tighter. The grass here was knee-high, hiding dips in the earth, old trash and worse. It smelled faintly of mold and something sour. The sun had dipped behind thick clouds, casting the ditch in shadow even though it was only 6:30 p.m. Liam's other friend, Mara, stood further back. She was silent, arms crossed, chewing her lip. "We said we'd look, right? Just look." "I'm not going in," Carter said. "We don't even know if this is where he went." Liam did. He remembered. It had been late that night. Alex had called him, crying, drunk. "I saw something," he had said. "It blinked at me, Liam. I swear." And then the call had cut out. The cops had never tracked his phone, claimed there was no signal record. But Liam knew better. He knew the last ping came from right here. He climbed the fence. "Liam, wait," Mara shouted, but he was already inside. The grass felt different here. Denser, heavy, like it didn't want to be disturbed. Each step made an ugly crunch, like stepping on something hollow beneath the ground. The ditch itself was deeper than it looked from outside. 10 feet down, filled with weeds, dirty water, broken plastic toys, rusted cans. And something else, something shiny. Liam stepped closer. It was a phone, half submerged in the muck. He pulled it free, an old iPhone, cracked screen, dead battery. But the sticker on the back was unmistakable. Alex's favorite band, The Agonies, obscure, depressing, exactly his style. He held it up, eyes wide. "Holy shit," he muttered. "It's his." Then the phone buzzed in his hand. He dropped it, screaming. Carter jumped the fence and sprinted over. What happened?" "It vibrated," Liam said, shaking. "It's dead." But it vibrated. Carter stared at the phone in the mud. Mara arrived seconds later, out of breath. "What was that noise?" The phone buzzed again, even louder. Then the screen flickered. A video began to play. The three huddled around it, barely able to see through the mud-smeared screen. The footage was grainy, static-covered, like something shot through an old camcorder. But the sound was clear. Breathing. Wet, gurgling, terrified breathing. Then a whisper. "It sees me." Alex's voice. Then the video glitched, screen tearing into green static. For a moment, just before it cut out, there was a shape in the corner. It didn't look human. Tall, spindly, bent backward like a broken marionette. No face, just folds and holes, and something pulsing where a mouth should be. Mara dropped the phone and screamed. "What the hell was that?" Liam backed away, heart pounding. "We're not done here." Carter grabbed his shoulder. "Dude, we found the phone." We saw enough. Let's call the police. They won't believe us. They'll believe that. No, Liam said. I'm not leaving without him. But he's gone, Carter snapped. Don't you get it? You want to be next? Liam didn't answer. He stared into the ditch. Something in the water moved, just a ripple. But against the stillness, it was loud. Wrong. Mara grabbed his hand. Please, let's go. And Liam nodded. But as they turned to leave, he looked back. The phone had sunk beneath the water again, and just beneath its surface, he saw an eye, watching, blinking. The nightmares began that night. Liam woke at 3:11 a.m., drenched in sweat. His sheets were tangled, damp with something that smelled faintly of moss. His room felt colder than it should have. He stared at the ceiling, trying to breathe, but his chest felt heavy, like something invisible was pressing down. In the dark, he could still hear it. The breathing, not his own. Slower, wet, guttural. He turned on the lamp. Nothing there. But on his phone, a new video had appeared, unlabeled, no sender. He hesitated, heart pounding, then tapped it. The screen flickered, then showed him the ditch. Same angle as before, but deeper now. The video moved like someone was walking underground, through a tunnel lined with rotting roots and dirt. The sound was back. It feeds on memory, a voice whispered. Not Alex. Something older. Then the screen went black. The next morning, Liam showed the video to Carter and Mara. Carter immediately stood up. No, I'm done. Come on. No, he repeated. This isn't a game anymore. I don't want to see this thing. Whatever's in that ditch, it's not human. It's not right. Mara was pale but quieter. I had a dream last night too, she said. Liam looked at her. In mine. Alex was in a hallway, like a school, but wrong. The lockers were rusted, the walls bled. And he kept saying, "Don't follow me." Did he look at you? Liam asked. She nodded, but his eyes weren't his. That evening, Liam went back, alone. The fence squealed as he climbed over it. The air around the ditch felt thicker now, harder to move through. Like the atmosphere changed the closer you got. He stepped down into the ditch again. The mud pulled at his feet like hands. The phone wasn't there anymore, but something else was. A notebook. Waterlogged but legible. He opened it. Page after page of messy handwriting, as if written in panic. It showed me what I did, what I forgot, what I tried to forget. This place, it feeds on guilt. It becomes guilt. And if you don't carry any, it'll give you some. Liam flipped ahead. Drawings. Horrible, frantic sketches of twisted humanoid figures, faceless, spindly, hollow-eyed. And one recurring image. A door underground. It looked wooden, rotted, with a symbol carved into it. A circle, and inside it, a vertical slit like an eye, stitched shut. Then at the bottom of the last page, you have to go through the door. It's the only way out. Suddenly, Liam felt it. He wasn't alone. Something behind him shifted. He turned. Nothing. Then he heard a snap, like a stick breaking underfoot. He sprinted up the incline, clawing through the grass, tearing his shirt on the fence, and didn't stop running until he was home. That night, his dream took him further. He was in a hallway just like Mara described. A decaying school hallway, warped and bleeding, with flickering lights and missing doors. One door stood at the end, rotted, marked. He opened it. Darkness. Then a whisper. You're ready. The next day, he didn't go to school. Neither did Mara. They met at the diner and sat in silence over cold coffee. It wants us to come back, Mara said. I know. I'm scared. So am I. But we can't leave him there. They looked at each other. They didn't speak of Carter. He hadn't answered texts or calls. His house was locked up. But Liam had a feeling he knew where he'd gone. and it wasn't good. That night they returned. Flashlights, ropes, masks, not to fight, just to survive. This time they brought shovels too. They followed the edge of the ditch toward a dip in the field, where the trees began again, an area even more overgrown. It was there they found the boards, rotting wood. Half buried, a door, exactly like the drawing. Liam looked at Mara. She was trembling. "We shouldn't do this. We have to." He pried the boards up. The smell hit them first, like something ancient, wet, and dead. Then the dark stairs revealed themselves, descending into the earth, deeper than any storm drain or bunker should go. Liam turned on his light and started down. Mara followed. The door shut behind them on its own. The air was foul, close, breathing was a chore. The tunnel walls were lined with roots that looked almost like veins. They pulsed sometimes, whispered faintly. Every now and then, they saw markings scratched into the dirt. Names: Alex, Carter, Liam, Mara. Liam's blood went cold. "This isn't a place," Mara whispered. "It's alive." They moved faster. Eventually, the tunnel widened into a room, a cavern. In the center, a chair, a school chair, and Carter, strapped to it. Eyes wide, mouth open as if mid-scream, but silent, covered in black veins, spreading from his chest to his limbs like something had rooted inside him. "Carter!" Liam ran forward. Carter blinked once, then slowly turned his head toward them. But it wasn't Carter anymore. Carter's head tilted unnaturally to the side, neck popping like dry twigs. His eyes had no color anymore, just a milky sheen that shimmered faintly in the flashlight beams. Black veins pulsed beneath his skin like ink in water. He opened his mouth, and something else spoke through him. "You shouldn't have come," Mara screamed. Liam stood frozen. "Carter?" he asked, voice cracking. The thing in Carter smiled. "He's not here anymore." He opened the door. He remembered what he buried, and I gave him a home. "What are you?" Liam whispered. The answer came in Carter's broken, hollow voice. "I'm the part of you that rots, the part you shove down and pretend never existed. I am what festers when truth is refused. I am memory with teeth." Suddenly, Carter's body spasmed, limbs jerking violently. His skin began to split. From within him, something moved, crawling up his throat, bulging behind his eyes. "Run!" Mara screamed. Liam didn't need convincing. They bolted down the nearest tunnel, hearing flesh rip and bones crack behind them. A screech echoed, wet and furious, followed by something scraping across the dirt after them. They turned corner after corner in the maze-like tunnels. Then Mara tripped. Her flashlight flew from her hand and broke against the wall. Liam grabbed her arm. "Come on." "It's coming," she sobbed. "It's in the dark." He pulled her to her feet and they dashed into an archway, only to find themselves in another room. This one was filled with desks, dozens of them. School desks, scratched, broken, stained. And at each one sat a figure, slumped, silent. Children, dead children. But their eyes moved. One by one, their heads turned toward Liam and Mara. "You forgot us," they whispered in unison. Liam stumbled back. I don't know you." But their faces began to shift, become familiar. People from their past. A kid Liam had bullied in 4th grade. A girl Mara had mocked in middle school, who later tried to take her own life. Each face accusing. Each whisper filled with rot. "You buried us. Now we bury you." The ground beneath them began to split. The desks sank. Hands reached up from under the floor, from inside the walls, clawing, grabbing. Mara screamed as a skeletal hand wrapped around her ankle. Liam pulled at her, yanking her free, and they ran again. Behind them, the children's whispers turned into a low chanting. A name. Ash Creek, Ash Creek, Ash Creek. They found another door at the tunnel's end. This one was warm, pulsing. The same symbol etched across it, but this time, it bled. Liam didn't hesitate. He pushed it open and they fell. Down, down, into the room beneath everything. The source, the heart of the ditch. They landed in ankle-deep black water. Above them, the tunnel was gone. No ceiling, just void. In front of them stood a figure, 10 feet tall, spindly, skin like old bark, stitched together with strands of human hair. Its head was split down the middle like a peeled fruit. From within, dozens of small, blinking eyes blinked in every direction. It spoke without a mouth. "You carry your sins like shackles. That's why you found me." Liam couldn't move. Mara trembled beside him. The creature stepped closer. "You seek someone who's already mine. But to reclaim what was taken, you must offer something." "What do you want?" Liam managed. It extended a hand. "Your guilt." And suddenly, Liam was no longer in the room. He was in his own memory. He was 12 years old, standing on the riverbank with Alex. Only this time he remembered something he'd forced himself to forget. They'd fought over something stupid, and Liam had pushed Alex hard. Alex had hit his head, passed out. Liam had panicked and run for help, but told no one what really happened. Everyone thought Alex just fell. Alex had always known the truth, and Liam had buried it. The memory shattered. Back in the heart of the ditch, Liam fell to his knees. The creature towered over him. "You see, it wasn't just grief that brought you here. It was penance." Mara tried to pull him away. "No," Liam said. "This is what it wants." He looked up at the creature. "Take it. My guilt. Take it all." The being leaned down and touched his forehead. A scream tore through the chamber, Liam's own. Every memory, every secret, every self-hated moment surged through him like fire. And then, silence. He collapsed. When he opened his eyes, he was outside. Back in the ditch, the sun was rising. The door was gone. Mara was beside him, crying, and from the weeds, a figure stumbled forward. Alex, alive, but changed. His eyes were older, haunted, but he was breathing. "You brought me back," he whispered. Liam tried to stand. Behind them, the ditch began to collapse. The ground shifted, and where the door had been, only dirt remained. They didn't speak much after that. Alex had changed. He walked like someone older than his years, quiet, wary. His eyes rarely met Liam's. When he did look, it was as if he was seeing through him. They didn't talk about what happened underground, not really, and no one would have believed them. The ditch was filled in by city workers the following week. Dangerous erosion, the report said. No mention of the tunnel, or the bodies, or the screams that neighbors had called in and were quietly ignored. Carter's house was eventually declared abandoned. No one ever saw him again, but Liam knew where he was. Part of him was still screaming in the dark. Weeks passed, then months. Alex returned to school. Quiet, not quite the same. Mara stopped sleeping. Nightmares clawed her every time she closed her eyes. She moved away without saying goodbye. And Liam? He tried to live normally, tried to forget. But the thing about the ditch, it didn't really let go. It started small. He'd find dirt in his bed, water pooling in corners of his room, whispers beneath his mattress. Sometimes when he closed his eyes, he saw the stitched door, still bleeding, still waiting. One night it came back. He woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, and the door was there, at the foot of his bed, wooden, warped, dripping. It had followed him, not metaphorically. Literally, it was now part of his room, like it had grown there. He tried to scream, but no sound came. The door creaked open, and from the dark inside, a voice he recognized whispered, One sin is never enough. Alex. But not him. Not anymore. Something stepped out. It wore his friend's face, but its eyes were hollow. Its hands were wrong, longer, sharper, twitching like broken branches. It sat beside Liam, gently. "You opened it," it said, tilting its head. "Now we stay open." The days after that were a blur. His mother found him sitting outside one morning, barefoot in the frost, dirt under his nails, eyes blank. He said nothing. Doctors called it a breakdown. They gave him pills. He stopped going to school. He stopped speaking. He would sit for hours staring at the wall, as if something there stared back. But sometimes at 3:11 a.m. he'd laugh, not like himself, like someone else was borrowing his throat. And from beneath the house, something breathed. The road stretched endlessly in every direction, flanked by dust, dying shrubs, and the occasional rusted sign eaten away by sand and time. It was supposed to be a simple road trip, one last hurrah before college split them apart. Jesse, Quinn, and Harper were three best friends who'd known each other since middle school, now barreling down the I-17 in Jesse's beat-up Ford Explorer with nothing but gas station snacks, bad music, and cheap energy drinks to keep them awake. The desert sun was dipping low, painting everything gold and bloody red. Quinn leaned forward from the back seat. "We need to stop soon. I've got to pee, and I think Harper's about to pass out." Harper, in the passenger seat, was already dozing, her head lolled against the window, lips slightly parted. "There's a rest stop in 20 minutes, Jesse said, tapping the GPS. "Exit 79. "Pretty sure that's not on the map." Quinn frowned, squinting at the physical highway guide in her lap. Jesse snorted. "The map's from 2008. Chill, the GPS says it's there." But 20 minutes later, the highway still hadn't changed. The landscape was the same. No exit signs, no signs of civilization at all. Then Jesse saw it, barely lit by their headlights. A crooked green sign, Exit 79, Ashwood Service Station, 1 mile. "See? Told you." Harper stirred awake just as Jesse turned off the highway onto the exit ramp. That's when the radio started hissing. Not static. Something else. Breathing. Wet. Rasping breathing. Jesse lowered the volume, but the sound grew louder. Then Quinn screamed, "Jesse! Stop!" There was a man in the road, middle-aged, pale, eyes like broken glass. He stood motionless as the Explorer screeched to a halt, barely inches from hitting him. Harper screamed. The man blinked, then smiled, slow, crooked, teeth-stained red, and vanished. Jesse's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "What the hell was that?" he whispered, voice trembling. He was just gone," Quinn stammered. "He didn't move, he didn't run, he just disappeared." Harper was silent. She stared ahead, pupils dilated, one hand still gripping the door handle like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. The road ahead wound through a stretch of dense, low-hanging trees, casting impossible shadows even though they were still in the Arizona desert. The air grew colder, thick. They drove in silence for nearly a mile before the service station came into view. It looked like something out of the 1950s. Dented gas pumps, a flickering neon open sign, and a small attached diner with broken windows. No lights on inside, no cars, no people. "This can't be it," Harper whispered. "This place is dead." Jesse parked hesitantly near the pumps. "Let's just use the bathroom, stretch our legs, and go. I'm not getting gas here." The moment they stepped out of the car, it hit them. The smell, like burnt meat and rusted metal. Quinn covered her mouth. "I think something died nearby." Harper pointed toward the diner door. It was slightly ajar. A red smear streaked across the glass. "Nope," Quinn said immediately. "No way I'm going in there." But the bathrooms were inside. Jesse took the lead. The door creaked as they pushed it open. Inside, the diner was a snapshot of decay. Booths covered in dust and mold. A half-eaten plate of food on the counter, crawling with black beetles. The lights flickered overhead. though they hadn't seen any power lines on the way in. "Bathroom's in the back," Jesse said. The hallway leading there was narrow and pitch dark. No windows, no exit signs. Harper took a flashlight from her bag and clicked it on. They walked. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. They passed 4 doors, each marked employees only, storage, manager, and then a 5th door, unmarked. Harper stopped. This wasn't here a second ago. The flashlight flickered. The door slowly creaked open on its own. Jesse stepped closer and shone his phone flashlight inside. There were stairs, leading down. "Guys," Quinn said behind them, "the entrance is gone." They turned. Where the hallway had opened into the diner, there was now only a wall, solid, unbroken. What the actual... A loud thud came from below, then another. Then a voice from the bottom of the stairs. "Don't close the door." Jesse turned pale. "Did you hear that?" "No. We're not going down there," Quinn said firmly, backing up. But there was nowhere to go. The hallway had sealed behind them. No entrance, no exit, only the stairs. The air was thick now, hard to breathe. Harper shone her flashlight into the stairwell. The walls were dirt, freshly dug, wet in some places like they were bleeding. Then the voice came again, closer now. "Don't close the door, please. I can't get out if you close it." Harper whispered, "It's a trap." But Jesse was already stepping down. "If there's someone down there, we can't just leave them." "Leave who?" Quinn hissed. "No one is supposed to be here. That voice isn't human." The door behind them suddenly slammed shut on its own. A loud click locked. They were going down, whether they wanted to or not. The staircase seemed endless. And then, without warning, the stairs ended in a room. A large earthen chamber like a hollowed-out basement. Faint light bulbs hung from wires nailed into the soil. One of them flickered, illuminating something in the far corner. A person, or what was left of one. A man sitting cross-legged facing the wall. His back was hunched, skin mottled, hair patchy. His arms were long, too long, fingertips dragging in the dirt. He was humming, not a song, a rhythm. Thump, pause, thump, thump, pause. The same cadence as the knocking they'd heard earlier. Harper moved slowly, flashlight trained on the figure. "Sir?" she said quietly. "Are you okay?" The humming stopped. He turned his head and screamed, not a scream of pain, a scream like he wasn't supposed to be seen. His mouth stretched impossibly wide. Skin cracked. Blood poured down his chin. Then he charged. They bolted back up the stairs. The flashlight died halfway. Hands reached from the walls, grasping, grabbing. Quinn screamed as something clawed at her ankle. Jesse kicked at it, dragged her up. They reached the top, but the door was gone, solid concrete now. No exit. The walls around them were breathing, pulsing. Then everything went dark. They woke up in the car, engine idling, sun rising. The service station was gone. So was the exit ramp. Just endless desert again. No one said a word. Harper turned to Jesse. "Your arm." He looked down. Long, thin scratches across his forearm. Deep, still bleeding, like fingernails. They reached the top. The door was gone, solid concrete, no exit. Walls around them were breathing, pulsing. Everything went dark. Woke up in the car, engine idling, sun rising, service station was gone. Endless desert. No one said a word. Harper turned to Jesse. "Your arm, long, thin scratches, deep, still bleeding, like fingernails." The car was silent except for the hum of the engine and the tires rolling over empty asphalt. Jesse didn't speak. He just stared at the road, white-knuckled. Harper sat in the passenger seat checking her phone. No signal, no GPS, just a blinking, searching. Quinn sat in the back, hugging her knees. After what felt like hours, they passed a sign. Exit 79, Ashwood, service station, 1 mile. Again, Harper gasped. "We're back. We didn't leave." "No," Jesse's voice cracked. "We never got out." The world shifted around them. The sky dimmed even though it was morning. The road curved in a direction that didn't exist on any map. The trees that weren't supposed to be there grew denser, thicker, almost swallowing the car. The radio sputtered to life. "You're still here. Still here. You never left. Open the door." The sound of something scratching from inside the speakers filled the car, like claws on metal. Quinn slapped the radio off. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Jesse pulled over, jumped out of the car. He was shaking. Something was moving under his shirt. He ripped it off. There were marks on his chest now. Circles, scratched into his skin with something sharp. Symbols. In some kind of language none of them recognized. They were moving, squirming. Quinn screamed. "Jesse, what's happening to you?" "I don't know," he gasped. "I don't..." Then he collapsed. They drove again, trying every road, every turn, every direction. No matter where they went, they ended up passing the same sign, Exit 79. But the service station never appeared again. Later that night, Harper heard whispering in her ear while she slept. A voice she recognized. Jesse's voice, except deeper. Wrong. "Let me in," it said. "I need more room." She woke to find Jesse staring at her. Eyes bloodshot, hands twitching. He smiled, but it wasn't Jesse's smile. He whispered. I opened the door again. Harper backed away from Jesse, heart racing. "What do you mean you opened the door again?" Jesse just stared at her, his pupils blown wide, irises almost gone. His voice sounded like it came from under his skin. "It followed us. It needed a vessel. I said yes." Quinn burst into the room, panicked. "He's bleeding again. Something's wrong with his back." Jesse stood up and turned around. Carved into his back were the same shifting symbols from earlier, but now they were glowing faintly red. Lines of blood oozed from each one like they'd just been etched, and something was moving beneath them, pushing outward, trying to get free. The lights flickered in the motel. A buzzing hum filled the room, growing louder. A low-frequency rumble that made their bones feel like they were vibrating. The TV turned on by itself, displaying static. Then a face appeared. Not human, not fully, twisted, eyeless, with a mouth that took up half its head and didn't move in sync with the words it spoke. "The road has no end. There is no way out. Exit 79 is home now." The motel room stretched, walls lengthened, ceiling warped. The door dissolved into shadow. They were back. The gas station again. Only this time the pumps were burning. The diner was upside down, and the sky was pitch black, stars blinking out one by one. Jesse dropped to his knees. He started laughing, then screaming, then both. His body twisted unnaturally, bones cracking as if rearranging. Something inside was breaking him open. Harper grabbed Quinn's hand. "We have to leave him. We have to run." "I'm not leaving him. He's not Jesse anymore." They ran, back into the desert, through the twisted trees, down endless roads that looped and repeated. Jesse's voice followed them, distant but close, whispering from every direction. "Don't close the door. Don't forget me. I'm right behind you." Eventually they woke up, back in the car, on the highway, no exit 79 in sight. But Jesse was gone. Just 2 seatbelts buckled, one missing. The doors were locked from the inside. Weeks passed. Back home, Harper and Quinn tried to return to normal life. But they both kept seeing Jesse, reflections, dreams, voices. One day Harper came home to find a note on her bed, written in Jesse's handwriting. "The road never ends. You just think you left." The lights in her room flickered. And in the corner, where the shadows were deepest, something moved. The Hollowing. The town of Black River, West Virginia, buried Ethan Cole on a Tuesday. He wasn't dead when they put him in the ground, at least not the way death is supposed to work, 3 days before, Ethan had vanished from his backyard. His parents found him standing in the woods behind their trailer park, his skin gray and waxy, his eyes black and wet like pooled ink. He didn't speak, didn't cry, just smiled, his lips stretching too wide, teeth too sharp. That night, his mother woke to the sound of chewing. Ethan crouched in the kitchen, his jaw unhinged like a snake's, gnawing on the family dog's half-eaten carcass. When she screamed, he turned, slow, deliberate, and lunged. His father shot him 6 times. The body kept twitching until they doused it in gasoline and set it ablaze in the yard. The sheriff called it rabies. The town knew better. The journalist. Maggie Keene arrived a week later, a disgraced true crime blogger chasing a lead. A voicemail had led her here, a man sobbing, begging someone to listen before the hollowing took him too. The call ended with a wet crunch. Black River was a graveyard. The gas station clerk crossed himself when she mentioned Ethan's name. The diner served her coffee with shaking hands. Only Deputy Hayes talked, and only after she poured whiskey into his coffee. First it was animals, he muttered. Dogs, deer, gutted but not eaten, just hollowed. Then kids started going missing. Now grown men walk out of the woods with their ribs cracked open, chests empty, like something ate them from the inside out. That night, Maggie woke to scraping at her motel door. The security footage showed Deputy Hayes standing there, his uniform torn, his ribs split apart like a butchered animal's. His chest cavity was empty. They're in the trees, he whispered. Then the power cut out. Dear Eva. An old drunk pointed her toward Blackbone Cavern, a collapsed mine where teenagers dared each other to go. That's where it started, he wheezed. They dug too deep, woke something up. The cave exhaled rot and copper. The walls glistened with vein-like growths. Her flashlight caught movement. A man, his torso split open, ribs peeled back like wings. His mouth stretched into a grin. You're late, he gurgled. Behind him, the shadows twitched. The truth. She ran. The thing followed. A mass of sinew and teeth, wearing human skin like ill-fitting clothes. It spoke in a chorus of stolen voices, all the missing, all screaming at once. We were hungry. We are always hungry. The last thing she saw before blacking out. A pit of bones and something ancient stirring in the dark. The broadcast. Maggie woke in her car, covered in dirt, her camera full of footage she didn't remember taking. She uploaded it before the fever took her. The video shows her standing in the woods, her mouth stretching, her ribs cracking open as something inside her uncurled. The final frame, a blur of teeth and text, "We are coming. Turn off your lights." Her last blog post, time-stamped after her death, reads, "It's in the soil, it's in the water, you're already infected." The thinning. Officer Dan Harris knew something was wrong when the 911 calls started coming in from Maple Ridge Trailer Park. Not the usual domestic disputes or meth-fueled nonsense. These calls were different. There's something in my walls. It's mimicking my wife's voice. Oh God, it's wearing Bobby's face. The first body was found at dawn. Old man Henderson, propped against his rusted-out pickup, his ribcage split open like a gutted deer. Not a drop of blood left inside. Dan radioed for backup. Static, hissed back. Day 1. The park's manager, a sweaty burnout named Roy, chain-smoked by Unit 12. Ain't just rats in them walls no more, he said, kicking the aluminum siding. Something thumped back, hard. Inside, the air smelled like spoiled meat and wet pennies. The wallpaper bulged in rhythmic pulses. Dan's flashlight caught movement in the kitchen, something pale and hairless darting behind the fridge. Too fast. Too many joints in its fingers. Roy didn't come out. Day 2. Half the trailers stood empty, doors swinging open to reveal splintered furniture and dark stains that crawled up the walls in root-like patterns. The remaining residents barricaded themselves indoors with shotguns and crucifixes. At Unit 8, Lisa Carmichael sobbed into Dan's vest. "It took Tyler first," she hiccuped. "Came through the vents, made these wet clicking sounds when it moved." Her toddler's crib was filled with a substance like congealed motor oil. The mobile above it turned slowly, though there was no breeze. Night 3. The power died at midnight. Dan patrolled with his pistol drawn, flashlight beam cutting through the thick dark. From Unit 5 came the unmistakable sound of a woman singing a lullaby. Except Mrs. Alvarez had been airlifted to County General that morning. Her jaw had unhinged like a snake's when they loaded her into the ambulance. The singing stopped mid-verse. Something scraped against the trailer's thin metal skin from the inside. Day 4. They found Roy's remains in the maintenance shed. His skin had been removed in one perfect sheet and draped over a lawnmower like a macabre slipcover. His teeth were arranged in a spiral pattern on the concrete floor. At the center, etched in bile, "We are the between things." Night 5. The radios finally crackled to life. Dispatch's voice warped and slowed like a dying tape recorder. "All units, retreat. Containment failed." Then the screaming started. Not human. Not anymore. Dan ran for his cruiser. The headlights flickered on by themselves, illuminating a row of figures standing perfectly still along the park's entrance. Their proportions were wrong, elbows too sharp, necks too long. One turned its head with a wet pop. It wore Lisa's face, her lips peeled back from needle teeth. "You'll thin nicely," she said in a voice like radio static. The state police found Dan's body in the septic tank, folded into a space no adult should fit. His skin was translucent, organs missing. His service pistol lay nearby, all 6 rounds fired. Forensics noted the tank should have held 3,000 gallons. It was completely empty. The Stitcher. The first child went missing on a Tuesday. By Friday, they found what was left of Emily Parker sewn into the old oak tree behind the elementary school. Not buried, not hung, woven. Her small body threaded through the bark like a needle through fabric, skin fused with wood grain. Her mouth had been stitched shut with what the coroner confirmed was human hair. Detective Grayson Cole pulled the case. 20 years on the force had hardened him to horrors, but this made his hands shake. The second child disappeared Sunday night. They found Michael Carter's remains in the town cemetery, his tiny fingers grafted onto a marble angel's hands, his eyelids sewn open to stare forever at the sky. His lips were parted slightly, as if caught mid-whisper. By the third disappearance, the pattern became clear. Something was collecting parts. The seamstress. Mrs. Abigail Verner had lived at the edge of Blackwood for as long as anyone could remember. Her Victorian home sagged under the weight of ivy and time, its windows perpetually dark. The children called her the nightgown lady for the tattered white dress she wore when glimpsed through her second-floor window. Grayson knocked on her peeling door at midnight. The wood was cold beneath his knuckles, unnaturally so. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air smelled of mothballs and something metallic. Dolls lined the hallway shelves. Not the plastic kind from toy stores, but flesh dolls, stitched together from mismatched skin, button eyes blinking in unison as Grayson passed. At the end of the hall, Mrs. Verner sat in a rocking chair, her back to him. "They never stay whole, do they?" she murmured, her voice like dry leaves scraping concrete. "Children are such fragile things." The rocking chair turned. Grayson's service pistol hit the floor. Mrs. Verner had no face, just a smooth expanse of flesh stretched tight over bone. Where her mouth should have been, crude stitches pulled her skin together in a grotesque smile. "But I can fix them," she whispered. "I can make them perfect." The collection. Grayson woke in the attic, his wrists bound with what felt like sinew. The room pulsed with the heat of a dozen kerosene lamps, their light flickering over walls papered with warskin. Children's faces stared at him from the wallpaper, their expressions frozen in various states of terror. Mrs. Werner hummed as she worked at a large oak table, her bone needle darting in and out of something small and pale. "Almost done," she crooned. "Just need the eyes." Grayson's stomach lurched as he realized what lay on the table, a patchwork child, stitched together from the missing boys and girls. Its chest rose and fell. It was breathing. "Mrs." Werner turned to him, a pair of scissors glinting in the lamplight. "Yours will do nicely." The last stitch. They found Grayson 3 days later, seated on the elementary school swings. His lips had been sewn shut, his eyes were missing, and cradled in his arms was a perfect, beautiful doll, its face made from the skin of 7 missing children, its button eyes gleaming black in the morning sun. When the paramedic tried to take it from him, Grayson's stitched mouth tore open in a silent scream. The doll's tiny hand twitched. The silence at Black Creek Farm. The animals stopped making sounds first. Old Man Haggerty noticed it on a Thursday morning, when his rooster didn't crow. He found the bird standing motionless in the yard, its beak sealed shut with something black and tar-like. By noon, every animal on his farm had fallen silent, the cows standing stiff in their pens, the dogs lying still as statues, their mouths fused closed. Then the children stopped speaking. Little Sarah Haggerty came in from playing by the creek with her lips sealed tight, her eyes wide with panic. When her parents tried to pry her mouth open, thick black fluid oozed from the seams. By nightfall, 7 more children had been afflicted. Sheriff Ellis found the first adult victim at dawn. Farmer Callahan kneeling in his cornfield, his face turned up to the sky. His lips had disappeared completely, the skin of his face stretching smooth and unbroken from nose to chin. His eyes. God, his eyes were still screaming. The preacher. Reverend Miller claimed it was divine punishment when half his congregation showed up to Sunday service with sealed mouths. He preached about the sins of gossip and foul language as black tears rolled down his parishioners' faces. Then, his microphone cut out. Those closest to the pulpit said they saw something dark and wriggling crawl out of the sound system. Said it moved like liquid but had too many legs. Said it flowed up the Reverend's pant leg before he could scream. When he opened his mouth to pray, only silence came out. The investigation. CDC specialist Dr. Lena Park arrived to find Black Creek a ghost town of silent stairs. Her first discovery. The black substance wasn't a fungus or parasite. Under the microscope, it moved with purpose. It learned. Her second discovery came too late. The thing in the water supply didn't just seal mouths. It fed on sound itself. Her final journal entry read, "It's spreading up the creek toward town. When it runs out of voices to consume, I think it will start on other sounds. Then maybe, the sounds things make inside." The page ended in a black stain. The last broadcast. WJKK radio stayed on the air longest. DJ Mike Carlson's final transmission cut in and out. Can hear it in the walls now. Feeds on vibrations. They're saying the Amish might have known. Had some word for it. Something like, the quiet death. A wet crunch. Then perfect silence. When state troopers arrived, they found the radio station empty. Microphones stood in pools of black ooze. Soundproofing foam on the walls pulsed gently, like something breathing. The only clue was the last song queued up but never played. The sound of silence on endless repeat. Epilogue. They quarantined the whole county. Sometimes at night, guards near the perimeter fence swear they can hear something whispering just beyond the tree line. It doesn't use words, just sounds, hungry sounds. The Whispering Walls. Detective Sarah Cole never believed in ghosts until she was assigned to the Holloway case. The Holloway family had been found dead in their suburban home, their faces frozen in identical expressions of pure terror. Autopsies revealed no cause of death, No toxins, no trauma. Just empty, like something had sucked the life right out of them. The only clue was a single word scratched into the bedroom wall. Listen. Sarah moved into the house as part of the investigation. The first night, she heard it. A faint whispering coming from the walls. Not voices, not exactly. More like something mimicking voices. Day by day, the whispers grew louder. Night by night, they grew clearer. They started saying her name. Then they started answering her thoughts. "We're so hungry, Sarah." She tried to leave. The front door wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't break. The walls began bleeding black sludge that smelled like rotting meat. The final police report noted Detective Cole was found in the master bedroom. Her body contorted in impossible ways. Her mouth stretched open in a silent scream. The walls around her were covered in frantic writing. "The house eats and it's always hungry." The new owners moved in last week. They say you can hear whispering in the walls. The Hunger of St. Farrell. The first miracle happened at the old Catholic orphanage on the feast day of St. Farrell. Sister Marguerite found the cancer ward empty at dawn, not a single child in their beds. She followed the trail of discarded IV tubes to the chapel, where 23 terminal patients knelt in perfect health before the reliquary. Their wasted limbs had filled out. Their bald heads sprouted thick hair, and their teeth, God forgive her, their teeth were all wrong. The second miracle. Bishop Dumont declared it divine intervention when little Claire Duval regrew her missing eye overnight. The new eye was darker than the other. It never blinked. By week's end, every sick child in the diocese had been brought to touch St. Farrell's bones. The crippled walked, the blind saw, the stillborn in the cemetery. Well, some miracles took longer. Father Lemaire noticed the changes first. The healed children only ate raw meat now. They avoided sunlight, and their shadows didn't quite match their movements. The reliquary. The Vatican investigator found Sister Marguerite in the crypt, her habit stiff with dried blood. She'd scratched something into the stone floor with broken fingernails. Not a saint. Never a saint. The reliquary stood open. The bones inside were too large, too many. Ribs like scythe blades, a jaw that unhinged like a serpent's, and the skull. The skull had 2 sets of eye sockets. The procession. They found the first missing child in the bell tower at midnight, her limbs elongated, her mouth stretched in a permanent scream. Her stomach had been slit open from the inside. By the time the mob reached the orphanage, the children had formed a procession behind the reliquary. Their eyes reflected the torchlight like animals in the dark. Their teeth clicked together in unison. From the chapel roof, something pale and many-limbed watched with St. Farrell's face. The last Eucharist. The final entry in Bishop Dumont's journal. We were so hungry for miracles we didn't ask what was performing them. The children take communion now with sharpened bones. The wine tastes like copper. I can feel my teeth growing longer. The page ends in a dark stain. When the new priest came to reclaim the diocese, he found the orphanage empty, but for the reliquary. The bones inside were small now, human-sized, fresh. The Bone Orchard. The first body was found with roses growing through its ribcage. Sheriff Hollis had seen poachers before, but never one planted upright in the soil like some macabre scarecrow. The corpse's mouth gaped open, its tongue replaced by a tangle of thorny stems. When the coroner peeled back the dead man's shirt, they found his chest cavity packed with dark soil and moving. Something slithered between his ribs. The Schleng. Blackthorn Farm had been abandoned since the '53 incident, when old Jeremiah Blackthorn disappeared, along with an entire harvest crew. The search party found only their clothes filled with freshly turned earth. The property sat rotting for decades, until the new owners noticed their crops growing unnaturally fast and hungry. Farmhand Miguel Gonzalez was the first to see the vines move at twilight, the first to notice rabbit carcasses disappearing from the trap lines, the first to scream when something pulled his bootlace into the soil. They never found his left foot. At a reaping, Agricultural Inspector Natalie Chen arrived to investigate the farm's miraculous yields. Her soil samples squirmed in their bags. Under magnification, the irrigation water revealed microscopic tendrils that twitched when exposed to light. At midnight, she watched through infrared as the cornfield rearranged itself, stalks parting to reveal perfect rows of human-shaped mounds. Her last journal entry: "It's not growing in the soil is growing." Them. The harvest. Sheriff Hollis led the raid at dawn. They found the farmhouse empty, but for the smell of fresh-turned earth and the terrible sound coming from the basement. A wet, rhythmic noise like roots pushing through flesh. The walls were alive with pulsing veins. The floorboards split open as something rose from below. A grotesque figure woven from corn husks and bone, its face a hollow where Jeremiah Blackthorn's skull should have been. Dirt poured from its eye sockets as it spoke in a voice like grinding seeds. "You'll yield well." The new crop. State troopers found the sheriff's cruiser idling at the property line, its interior choked with fast-growing vines. The radio played static on every channel except one, a looped transmission of screaming that sounded suspiciously like singing. At the county line, the first sign reads, "Blackthorn Farms, pick your own." The second sign, added more recently, reads, "Now hiring seasonal workers." The soil here is very rich. The Hourglass Children. The first child born after the eclipse opened his eyes, all four of them, and spoke in a voice like grinding glass. "Mother, I remember the desert." The Changed. Midwife Eleanor Shaw had delivered every baby in White Sands for 30 years. She knew the moment she touched Mrs. Patterson's distended belly that something was wrong. The skin moved like liquid beneath her fingers. The baby's heartbeat came in triplets. When the child finally emerged, Eleanor barely stifled her scream. Its skin was the color of bleached bone. Its two long fingers ended in translucent claws. And when it turned its head to look at her, she saw the sand moving behind its pupils, as if something vast stirred just beneath its fragile human mask. The Memories. By month's end, 12 more changed children had been born. They never cried, never slept, only stared at the desert with those terrible knowing eyes and spoke of a city buried beneath the dunes, a great clock counting backward. The harvest that would come when it reached zero. Sheriff Carter found the first missing infant in the old mission ruins. The baby sat cross-legged in the dust, tracing symbols in the sand with one clawed finger. Its diaper was clean. Its skin was cold. When Carter reached for it, the child looked up with a smile that showed too many teeth. "You'll drown in time," it whispered. "The well." Eleanor followed the children's footprints into the desert one scorching afternoon. The trail ended at a dry well that hadn't been there yesterday. From its depths came a sound like 100 clocks winding backward. The children stood in a circle around the pit, holding hands. Their eyes reflected no light. Their mouths moved in unison. "They're coming up the well." The Last Baptism. The sheriff's final journal entry. Eleanor went into the well after them. She hasn't come back out. The mission bell rings by itself at night now. Sometimes I see the children dancing in the square, but when I get closer, it's just whirlwinds of sand. This morning I found my wife pregnant again. The doctor says it's impossible. I can feel it moving inside her. The highway sign reads, "White Sands, Pop 0. But if you stop your car at sunset, if you listen very carefully over the sound of the wind, you can hear it. The faint, maddening tick of a great clock counting down beneath your feet." The desert stretched endlessly, flat and sunburnt, as the black SUV hummed along Route 90 westbound. Inside, 5 college friends, Zane, Monica, Riley, Jason, and Brooke, laughed over old stories and sipped warm sodas. It was their final summer together before life scattered them across the country. The plan was simple: a road trip from Texas to California, detouring through scenic routes, sleeping under stars, and making memories. They never planned for the lost road. It started at a gas station in a forgotten town called Edavane. The sun was low, painting the sky with bruised purple clouds. Zane had insisted they stop to fuel up, despite the car still being nearly half full. "I don't like driving below half," he said. "Paranoia from my dad." The others got out to stretch. The station looked abandoned. No music, no lights, just one ancient pump and a caged-up convenience store with a flickering "open" sign that buzzed more than glowed. Jason went inside. The bell above the door gave a weak ting. An old man stood behind the counter, unmoving, staring directly at him. His eyes were milky, pupils nearly invisible. Jason cleared his throat. Hey, just grabbing some snacks." No reply. As Jason reached for a bag of chips, the man said suddenly, "You kids headed west?" Jason nodded slowly. "You passed it already." "Past what?" "The turn. Road doesn't like when people miss it." Jason forced a chuckle. "Okay, thanks for the chips, man." But as he turned to leave, the man added, "If the radio starts hissing, pull over and don't look in the rear view." Jason didn't tell the others. He brushed it off as desert madness. They got back in the SUV and drove on. Zane set the GPS to shortcut through what Google Maps called Farm Road 1470, a thin gray line weaving across nothingness. According to the map, it would cut an hour off the trip. "Looks sketchy," Riley muttered. "We're already behind schedule," Monica argued. "If we can make up time, we should." They turned off the highway onto the narrow path. No signs, no lights, just the crunch of gravel beneath tires. That's when the radio hissed, not static. Something more like breathing. Jason's stomach dropped. "You okay?" Brooke asked, noticing his face. He nodded too quickly. "Just tired." The desert faded to dry forest, bony trees without leaves arching overhead like ribs. The road narrowed. Wind picked up. Dust curled around the SUV like fingers. Then they saw the first sign. White hand-painted letters on splintered wood. "No return past mile 9. They all laughed it off. "Creepy locals," Zane said, "trying to scare tourists." They passed mile 1. Then 2. At mile 3, the GPS glitched. It spun wildly before freezing. Mile 4, Brooke said she saw a person standing between trees. No one else saw it. Mile 5, Monica lost cell service. Everyone else had already lost theirs. At mile 6, Riley said he could hear whispering. Just faintly. Under the engine noise. "Turn around," he said. "No way," Zane replied. "We're already halfway through. Going back would take longer." Mile 7, the sun set far too fast. It was full light 1 minute, dusk the next. Then pitch black. Jason watched the mile markers, heart pounding. Mile 8. The SUV's engine sputtered, then caught, then sputtered again. "Keep going," Brooke shouted. "We're almost through." Zane's knuckles were white on the wheel. Finally, mile 9. The road bent. A second sign appeared. "You were warned." And the road split. Literally, like it had been torn open. Not collapsed. Ripped. A massive fissure swallowed the path, stretching far in both directions. Zane slammed the brakes. Tires screeched. Everyone jerked forward. They sat in silence. No words. Then Riley whispered, "We have to go back." Zane threw the SUV into reverse, tires spitting gravel. They passed mile 8, then 7, then 6. But the trees looked wrong now. Closer, bent inward like they were watching. At mile 5, they saw it. A car, parked sideways on the road, lights off, no one inside, and something written in blood on the hood. "You can't leave." They stared at the message on the hood. "You can't leave." The blood looked fresh. Zane tried to go around the abandoned car, but the road was too narrow. Trees on either side pressed inward like jaws ready to snap shut. "I'll move it," Jason said, his voice barely steady. "No," Monica grabbed his arm. What if it's a trap?" Jason looked around. There was no wind, no sound, just silence. The kind that presses on your ears like deep water. "I'm not sitting here all night," Zane muttered and opened his door. As he approached the car, Brooke noticed something in the passenger seat of their SUV. A shape. "Wait," she whispered. "Is someone in our back seat?" Everyone turned at once. Nothing. Empty. Zane pushed the car. It didn't move. He looked into the driver's window. There was no steering wheel, no seats, just black. An endless void stretching deep into the vehicle. He stumbled back. Jason ran forward and grabbed his arm. "What's wrong?" Zane looked pale. "It's not a car. It's not real." And that's when it moved. The car twitched, just a little, like a living thing stretching muscle beneath flesh. Riley screamed, "Get in! Go!" They all piled in, Zane gunning the engine. He drove straight, off the road, through the underbrush. Branches tore at the paint. Something smashed a window, but they got past it, back on the gravel road. Mile 4. Then 3. Suddenly, the road ended, right where they started. The gas station from before sat in front of them, dark and lifeless. But something was different. The lights were on inside the store, flickering, unsteady, and the old man was standing in the doorway, arms at his sides, staring straight at them. Jason opened the door. "No," Monica warned, but he stepped out. Jason walked toward the man, heart pounding. "What is that place?" he asked. "Why can't we leave?" The old man didn't blink. "You went down the wrong road. We just need to get out." The man pointed. "You want to escape? Burn it." "What?" "The map." "What map?" But the old man was gone, like he was never there. Jason ran back to the SUV. "Do we have a map?" "No one uses maps anymore," Zane said. "We use GPS." Brooke checked the glove box. Inside, a folded piece of yellowed paper, a road map. Hand-drawn, it showed their path. Route 90, the gas station, and Farm Road 1470, a red X at mile 9. In the corner, tiny scribbled words, "Only fire breaks the path." Without hesitation, they grabbed their lighters and snacks soaked in gasoline from the emergency kit. Zane lit the edge. The map curled, blackened, and then burst into flame. Suddenly, the sky above them shifted, like someone had pulled a curtain away. Stars flickered violently. The wind howled, the earth groaned, and when the fire died, they were gone. Back on the highway, real highway. Route 90, other cars zoomed past. It was daylight. They pulled over, got out, and collapsed onto the warm asphalt, laughing, crying. Jason looked behind them. No sign of the road, no trees, no gas station, just open desert. "I never want to see a dirt road again," Riley muttered. They got back in and drove away. But in the rearview mirror, the gas station flickered back into view. The man was there, still staring, waiting. They drove in silence, no music, no jokes, just the steady hum of tires on pavement and the haunting weight of what they'd experienced. None of them wanted to talk about it, afraid that acknowledging it would make it real again. But the nightmare wasn't over. Around dusk, Riley noticed the gas gauge drop, fast, from half full to empty in a blink. "What the hell?" he said. Zane cursed. "That's impossible." They pulled into the next station. This one looked normal. Busy, bright lights, people moving inside. Relieved, they climbed out. Jason headed inside to pay. But the woman at the counter stared at him strangely. "Did you come off Farm Road 1470? He froze. "How do you know that?" She tapped her temple. "People who escape that road, you can see it in their eyes. The emptiness, the echo." Jason's mouth went dry. "What is that place?" She shook her head slowly. "It's not a place, it's a loop, a test. Not all make it out." I thought we burned the map. We were free." "Were you?" she asked. "Did all of you come back?" Jason's blood went cold. Outside, he counted. Zane, Monica, Riley, Brooke. "Wait. Brooke," he yelled. She wasn't there. None of them had noticed. Back in the car, Jason shouted, "Where's Brooke?" Everyone looked around. I thought she was sleeping," Monica said, panic rising. Zane threw the car in reverse, tires squealing. Back on the road, Jason opened his window and shouted, "Brooke!" But the road stretched empty in both directions. Then the radio hissed. Again. Not static. Voices. Faint at first, then clearer. "She's still there. She never left." Jason turned the dial, trying to shut it off. Suddenly, Brooke's voice. "Why didn't you wait for me?" The air grew cold. Too cold. Their breath misted in the summer heat. The SUV headlights flickered, and then she was standing in the middle of the road. Her eyes were all black, smiling. Jason screamed. Zane swerved to avoid hitting her, and the car spun off the road. Crash. Everything went dark. When Jason opened his eyes, it was night. Again. The sky above was wrong. Too many stars, and none he recognized. The others groaned, slowly waking up. Brooke sat in the driver's seat, smiling. "Where are we?" Riley asked, his voice shaking. Brooke answered, but it wasn't her voice. It was layered. Hundreds of voices overlapping in one. Back at mile 1. They looked outside. Same bent trees. Same narrow road. Same sign. No return past mile 9. Jason grabbed the map from his pocket. Except it wasn't burnt. It was whole. The red X had moved. Now it marked mile 1. Zane whispered, "It's starting over." Brooke turned to face them. "Who's ready for another trip?" The moment they looked back at the road, the air thickened. Everything around them seemed distorted, like they were stuck in a painting. The trees didn't sway. They bent, as if frozen mid-movement. The sky was now a dull orange, as if caught in a constant, never-ending sunset. Brooke, no, it in Brooke's body, laughed. The sound wasn't hers, it wasn't human. "The journey never ends," it said. Its voice now mixing with others, old and new, as though the land itself was speaking. Jason felt his breath catch. He couldn't think. The world was turning against them, unraveling like a fraying thread. They weren't meant to be here. "We have to get out," Monica whispered, backing away from Brooke. Slowly. But Zane shook his head. "There's nowhere to go." "I don't care. We're not staying here," Riley said. He stopped, eyes wide in terror. The road. It was changing. The dirt beneath their feet began to shift and swirl, as if the very foundation of the world was unhinged. The ground buckled. The air cracked open. And through that tear, something moved. A shape, a towering figure, too tall, its limbs like thin, twisted branches. A shadow from a nightmare pulsing with an unnatural glow. It stepped forward, its feet lifting from the ground with an eerie silence, not making a sound, just growing closer with each blink of their eyes. Jason froze. "Move!" Zane shouted, grabbing Monica's arm. They ran, but the thing, the shape, moved faster. Its limbs stretched like elastic, too long, reaching for them. Fingers twisted and uncoiled, the air around them thick with dread. Behind them, Brooke, it smiled wider, impossibly wide. "Run. You can't escape the road." They didn't stop. They ran down the road, the earth shaking beneath their feet, the trees looming above like dark, silent watchers. Every step was a battle against the pull of the land itself, a land that didn't want them to leave. The road was alive. Zane screamed, "Look, the car!" It was ahead of them, but the SUV was different now. Not the same SUV. It was a wreck. The windows cracked, the doors smashed open, and the wheels were flat. No engine, just an empty, decaying shell. Jason could feel something in the air. Something was changing. They stopped, panting, staring at the wreck. And that's when the whispers started. Low at first, then louder, incomprehensible. But still. Human. Turn around. Turn back. Monica clutched her head. It's not real. This isn't real. But it was. It had to be real. The whispers grew louder. You can't run. You're already here. Zane turned, desperately searching for any way out. The air was thick, suffocating. The thing that had been chasing them stood in front of the wrecked SUV, its towering form blocking their path. Why? Didn't you listen? It was standing still, motionless. And then it spoke again. You're part of it now, forever. Jason spun around and saw Brooke, again, standing in front of them, blocking their escape. Her form was distorted, shifting, like a mirage made of fear. Her eyes were still empty black voids, and her smile had spread unnaturally wide. We can't leave, she said in that same layered voice. The road decides who stays and who doesn't. Monica screamed, No, let us go. But the sky above her darkened. The road beneath them pulsed, like the heart of something ancient, beating slow and steady. And in the distance, the first of the signs appeared, Mile 1 right behind them. Jason stared at the Mile 1 sign behind them. No, he whispered. We've been running forward. How is it? Behind us. Riley dropped to his knees, hands in his hair. This road doesn't follow logic, it folds. Monica trembled. Then what now? We wait to die? No, Jason said. We end it. He pulled the map from his pocket. The red X had vanished. In its place, scrawled in fresh ink, Burn what you carry. He looked at the others. It was never the map. It's us. Zane blinked. What are you saying? Jason stood tall. We're carrying it. The fear, the guilt, the memory of the road. That's what keeps us here. The thing in Brooke's skin stepped closer. You'll never be free. You came looking for something. Now you found it. What did we come looking for? Monica shouted. Brooke tilted her head. Truth. The road cracked beneath their feet. Light bled upward, red and molten, veins of fire splitting through the ground like a heartbeat. Throw it in, Jason said. Throw what? Riley asked. Jason looked at him. Everything. Pictures, phones, IDs, anything that ties you to the road, to what happened. Zane hesitated, but then opened his backpack. One by one, they threw everything in. Photos, wallets, phones, memories. Monica clutched a bracelet Brooke had given her once. Tears welled in her eyes. She was my best friend. She's gone, Jason said, voice breaking. That thing isn't her. She dropped the bracelet into the flames. The road screamed. The very trees trembled, shedding black leaves that turned to ash before hitting the ground. Brooke's form flickered, then vanished in a burst of dark smoke. The towering figure let out a soundless roar and dissolved into shadow, sucked into the molten cracks beneath them. The road began to collapse. Jason grabbed Monica's hand. Run! They ran. The mile markers exploded behind them. Mile 2, Mile 3, erased in fire and light. They burst through the edge of the forest just as the sun rose on the horizon. Grass, real air, birds chirping. They were out. They collapsed, gasping, staring back. But there was nothing behind them. No trees, no road, just empty plains. Zane laughed, a mad sound. We made it. Riley wiped his face. We lost Brooke. Jason looked down at his hand. The map was gone, just ashes in the wind. 3 days later, Jason sat alone in his room. The TV buzzed softly in the background. A local news report mentioned a hiker disappearing off Farm Road 1470. Jason turned it off. Outside, a car passed, and for just a second, He saw Brooke's reflection in the mirror, smiling. Mile marker 187. 3 friends, 1 highway, and a mistake they couldn't undo. It started with a flat tire on Highway 59, somewhere in Nevada's endless desert. No signal, no passing cars, just the heat shimmering off the asphalt. Jake, Tori, and Lennox were heading to a music festival in California. They joked about it at first. "Bet this place is haunted," Tori said, sipping warm soda. Then Jake saw it. A rusted road sign just off the shoulder. Mile 187. Except that mile marker didn't match their GPS location. They should have been near mile 163. Jake crossed the dry brush to check it out. That's when they heard the hum. Not a car engine, not a phone. Something low and deep, vibrating through the ground. Then came the dust cloud. A car was approaching, old, black, windows tinted pitch dark. It slowed, stopped. No one got out. But the back door opened. Slowly. No one spoke. Tori whispered, "Don't." But Lennox stepped forward and got in. The door shut. The car peeled off down the highway, and in seconds, it vanished in the heat. Jake and Tori screamed after it, ran. Nothing, only tire tracks. That stopped halfway, like the car had disappeared. They waited. Hours. Night fell. Still no Lennox. Then the radio in their dead car flickered on. Static. Then a voice. "Passenger acquired. Room for 1 more." Jake smashed the radio, but the hum returned. The black car again. This time it didn't slow. It passed them, and in the windows Jake saw faces, dozens of them, pressed against the glass, mouths open, but no sound. One looked like Lennox. They ran, no idea where. Found a diner glowing dimly at the edge of the desert. Desert Bell Cafe. They stumbled in, no staff. Just a jukebox playing 50s rock and red leather booths coated in dust. A bell rang behind the counter, and an old woman appeared, smiling. Too wide. "Sit wherever you like, dears." Jake asked if she had a phone. "No phones here. You've passed the mile." "What mile?" "Mile 187. You don't come back from that." They ran again, back to the road. And now, it was different. Twisted. Looping. The GPS spun in circles. Jake saw another sign, mile 187 again, and again, and again. Then, the black car appeared behind them, chasing. They drove. Fast. But no matter how fast, they were never faster than the hum. Then Tori vanished. One blink. She was gone. The rearview mirror showed her still sitting, smiling, mouth moving without words. Jake crashed the car. Woke up alone. Dust in his lungs. Desert quiet. No sign of the car. No friends. Only the hum. And a single new mile marker beside him. Mile 188. He had moved 1 forward, and the voice whispered in the wind, "Welcome, driver." To this day, Nevada State Patrol warns travelers about Highway 59. They say if your GPS glitches and you see a rusted sign reading Mile 187, don't stop, don't look, and for God's sake, don't get in. Exit 47. The road stretched endless ahead of them, flat, dark, and empty. Kayla, Marco, and Jenna were driving cross-country from Colorado to California. It was supposed to be a graduation adventure. One last hurrah before adulthood began. But somewhere past Utah, things started going wrong. It began with the GPS glitching. They were supposed to be on Route 70, but suddenly the screen said, "Recalculating, now entering exit 47." Only, there was no exit, just a narrow side road they didn't remember passing. Marco at the wheel frowned. "You guys ever hear of Red Pine Road?" They hadn't, but the GPS insisted. Faster route found. The road led into dense woods, the kind that seemed untouched by time. No cell service, no lights, just forest on both sides. Then they passed the first sign, "Welcome to Crow Hill." There was no town on the map, and no other cars. That night, they found a small roadside motel, Pine Rest Inn, no staff, just a bell and a key with room number 3 on it. Kayla rang the bell. No answer. The key was warm. Inside the room, everything was old, not rustic, ancient. The TV played static. The walls were covered in strange symbols. Jenna wanted to leave, too late. The car wouldn't start. And outside, the woods had gotten closer, as if the trees moved during the night. That's when they heard the scratching from under the bed. Marco looked. There was a second key. Room 6. They hadn't seen a room 6. Curious and scared, they checked the hallway. Room 6 wasn't numbered, but the door was cracked open. Inside, a mirror, floor to ceiling, black framed. And in the reflection, all 3 of them could see a 4th person, tall, wearing a deer skull, standing behind them. They turned. No one there. When they looked back at the mirror, the reflection smiled. That night, Jenna went missing. No sound. No struggle. Just gone. But her reflection remained, still standing with them. The next morning, the woods were even closer, touching the motel now. The sign outside changed, no longer Pine Rest Inn. Now it said, "You are home." Kayla and Marco tried running, through the woods, no paths, no roads, only tree after tree, and voices, calling their names, in Jenna's voice, in their own voices. They finally stumbled onto the road again. Their car was back, working. They drove for hours. But no matter which way they turned, every exit sign read, "Exit 47, Crow Hill." They were trapped. 6 months later, a state trooper found an abandoned car on a forgotten forest road. Plates traced to Colorado students. No bodies, just a cracked mirror in the back seat. And when he looked inside it, he swears he saw 3 people smiling back. The Whispers of Zarim Desert. It was supposed to be an adventure. Jack, a travel vlogger with millions of subscribers, wanted something unique for his next video. No more cities, beaches, or tourist traps. He wanted isolation, mystery. He wanted the Zarim Desert. Locals warned him about it. "It's cursed," said the old man at the gas station near the edge of the sand sea. "People go there and never come back." Jack smiled. Perfect. The first 2 days went well. Jack recorded sweeping shots of endless dunes, talked to his camera about the desolate beauty, and camped beneath a sky full of stars. But on the 3rd night, things changed. It started with the whispering. At first, it was faint, like wind teasing the edges of his tent. But the desert was deathly still. No breeze, no movement. Just soft, unintelligible voices circling him. He unzipped his tent and stepped outside. The sand stretched untouched in all directions. Moonlight bathed the dunes in silver. Nothing moved, but the whispers grew louder. Jack spun around. "Who's there?" Silence, then a faint laugh. High-pitched, childlike. It came from behind a nearby dune. Against better judgment, Jack grabbed his flashlight and camera. This could be viral gold. He climbed the dune, camera recording. On the other side was a flat stretch of sand and impossibly a door. Not a building, just a wooden door standing upright, alone in the middle of the desert. Jack approached. The door was old, cracked, and covered in strange symbols burned into the wood. He touched the knob. The whispers stopped. He opened the door. There was nothing behind it, just more sand. But when he looked back, the landscape had changed. His camp was gone. The dunes were taller, darker. The stars above had shifted, forming constellations he didn't recognize. His GPS showed nothing. No location, no signal. Jack turned back to the door, but it was gone. He wasn't alone. Figures stood on the dunes, tall, thin, cloaked in shadow, eyes like burning coals. They didn't move, just watched. He ran. Hours passed, or minutes. Time felt broken. The sand beneath his feet whispered now. It said his name. Over and over. Jack tripped and fell into a pit. At the bottom, he found bones. Human bones. Dozens of them, all facing upward as if they died looking at something. He climbed out, breath ragged, and found a structure ahead. A temple, half buried, made of black stone. Desperation drove him inside. Inside, the air was cold. Walls were covered in the same symbols as the door. In the center, an altar. On it, a book. Jack opened it. Pages of skin. Writing in blood. He couldn't read it. But the moment he touched it, he understood. This desert wasn't just cursed. It was a prison. For them. The Whispering Ones. Ancient beings, trapped beneath the sand, feeding on fear, drawing in those who came alone. They needed someone to read the words aloud, to finish the ritual, to let them out. Jack slammed the book shut. The temple shook. Screams echoed from the walls, not his. The things were angry. He ran outside. The sun was rising. Maybe, just maybe, he could escape. He ran for hours, days. No water, no food. The sun burned his skin. The whispers never stopped. He recorded everything. His phone had no signal, but he kept talking to the camera. This is Jack Harper. If anyone finds this, don't come here, don't open the door. They're real. They're still watching me. Even now. The screen cut off. Weeks later, a search party found his camera. Nothing else. They posted the final video online. Millions watched it. Some called it a hoax. Others noticed something strange. In the last frame, just before the camera dies, behind Jack, a door, and it was open. The Sand Collector. When Eliza Turner accepted the archaeological grant, she thought she'd struck gold, figuratively and literally. The ruins in the Sahara had never been explored due to the harsh conditions and legends surrounding them. But Eliza didn't believe in legends. She believed in facts, artifacts, and dust-covered truths. Her team consisted of 4, herself, Malik, her local guide, Jonas, her assistant from the university, and Diana, her best friend and photographer. They set up camp near what satellite images showed to be the outline of a buried structure, deep within an unmarked section of the desert. On the first day, they uncovered the top of a sandstone doorway. There were carvings of hands reaching upward, faces without eyes, and a symbol resembling a closed eye inside a sun. Diana took photos, marveling at the detail. "These aren't like anything we've seen from this region," Eliza whispered, brushing off sand from a stone tablet. The tablet had a single phrase etched in strange, ancient letters. Malik translated quietly. "He collects what is forgotten, leave him buried." That night, the wind howled louder than usual. Sand pelted their tents like bullets. In the distance, Diana thought she saw someone walking across the dunes, dragging a large sack behind them. The next morning, Diana was gone. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Her camera, however, lay outside her tent, filled with photos she hadn't taken. Each showed the team from the previous night sleeping in their tents. The final photo was of Diana herself, staring into the lens with wide, terrified eyes. Behind her, something shadowy, tall, and hunched loomed. Jonas wanted to leave immediately. Malik agreed, but Eliza refused. "We're too close," she said. They continued digging. By noon, they uncovered a set of stairs descending into the sand. The air from below was cold, dry, and carried a scent of rot and iron. With headlamps and ropes, they went down. The chamber was vast. The walls were lined with shelves, and the shelves were filled with jars. Each jar held sand. But beneath the sand were teeth, fingernails, pieces of bone. Jonas threw up. Malik muttered prayers. At the far end of the chamber stood a statue. It was 10 feet tall, emaciated, head bowed, holding a massive sack in one hand, a crooked staff in the other. Its face was blank, but beneath the skin something shimmered, something alive. A second tablet lay at its feet. Eliza read it aloud. "He walks behind storms, carries what time forgets. Do not speak his name. Do not wake the collector." The air changed. Cold vanished. The stillness turned to pressure. Then they heard it. A dragging sound. Something heavy. Moving in circles above them. Malik ran first. Jonas followed. Eliza stood frozen. She stared at the statue. She swore its sack twitched. She climbed back up, heart racing, only to find Malik's body, buried up to his neck in sand, mouth stuffed full of it, eyes wide open and dry. Jonas screamed and ran into the dunes. Eliza gave chase. She found Jonas hours later, standing still, facing the wind, whispering to no one. His skin had begun to crack like dry clay. Sand poured from his mouth and eyes. Eliza returned to the chamber alone, desperate for answers. The statue was gone. In its place was a trail, deep, dragged footprints, a staff-shaped groove beside them, leading deeper into the dark. She followed. The tunnel grew tighter, the walls narrower, until she found the final room. Inside were more shelves, more jars. One was freshly sealed. It had a strip of Diana's scarf tied around the top. Then she heard the breathing, slow, heavy, right behind her. She turned. The collector stood in the doorway, taller than before. The sack it carried twitched and groaned. Its face was still featureless, but in place of eyes, 2 pinpricks of red light burned beneath the skin. It raised one finger and touched it to where its lips would be. Silence. Eliza screamed. Darkness. No one ever found the team. Only their camp, and a single photo left in Diana's camera. A man-like shape dragging a bulging sack into a sandstorm, vanishing without a trace. Locals say if you hear whispering in the dunes and find a jar buried in the sand, don't open it. He only collects what you try to forget. Whispers in the rain. It was the kind of night where the rain never seemed to stop, hammering against the windows with relentless fury. Emily stood at the edge of the old farmhouse's porch, looking out at the storm that had come out of nowhere. The sky had turned an eerie shade of gray, the clouds swirling like a storm had taken form in the very fabric of the heavens. The wind howled through the trees, and the distant thunder rumbled as if the world itself was being torn apart. Emily had come here to escape. She needed peace, quiet, a retreat from the noise of her busy life back in the city. The farmhouse had seemed like the perfect solution when her friend had suggested it. A little cottage tucked away in the woods, far from the hustle of daily life. The brochure had promised tranquility, but tonight Emily was beginning to feel a strange unease settle in her chest. She turned and stepped back inside the house, her boots squelching on the wet wooden floors. The air in the farmhouse smelled musty, like old wood and forgotten things. She had found it strange that the house seemed so old-fashioned, faded wallpaper, ancient furniture, and a fireplace that was barely used. But it wasn't until she had been here for a few hours that she realized the true eeriness of the place. It was quiet, too quiet. There were no sounds from the outside, no birds calling, no distant rustling of leaves in the wind. It was as though the whole world had been muted by the heavy rain. She had turned on the radio when she first arrived, but it was just static, an unsettling silence that seemed to echo in her bones. That's when she heard it, a faint tapping. It came from somewhere in the house, echoing down the hallway. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. She glanced around the room, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. No sign of movement, no reason for the noise. Yet the tapping continued, soft but distinct. It was coming from the attic. The thought of going up there sent a chill down her spine. She had never been fond of attics, the dark spaces filled with forgotten memories and dust. But curiosity got the better of her. Maybe it was just the wind or the house settling. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and made her way up the creaky stairs. The attic door loomed at the end of the hallway, an old wooden panel that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. She reached for the doorknob, but her hand froze just before touching it. A sense of dread washed over her, like the house itself was holding its breath. Still, she pushed through the feeling and twisted the knob. The door creaked open, revealing the darkness beyond. The flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating stacks of old boxes and forgotten furniture covered in sheets. The air smelled of mildew, and the floorboards groaned under her weight as she stepped inside. And then she heard it again. The tapping. This time it was louder, more insistent. Emily's breath hitched in her throat as she slowly turned, scanning the room. Her light flickered as if the battery were dying, and for a moment she thought she saw something move in the corner of the attic. A shadow? A figure? No, it was just her imagination, she convinced herself. But the tapping continued. She followed the sound, creeping toward the far corner of the attic. There, partially hidden under a pile of old blankets, was a small wooden box. The tapping was coming from inside. Her hand trembled as she reached for the box. It was cold to the touch, the wood slick with moisture. She slowly lifted the lid, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside was a doll. It was small and fragile, its porcelain face cracked in several places, its clothes stained with age. But it wasn't the doll itself that made her blood run cold. It was the eyes. They were wide open, staring up at her with an unnervingly lifelike gaze. Before she could react, the wind outside howled louder, rattling the windows, and the attic door slammed shut behind her. Emily spun around, her pulse racing as she fumbled for the flashlight, but the light flickered once more, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. That's when the whispers began. At first it was faint, like the sound of a distant conversation, but as she strained to listen, the voices grew louder, clearer until they filled the attic, surrounding her. The words were unintelligible, a jumble of syllables that made no sense, yet they felt oddly familiar. Emily backed away, the doll still in her hands, its glassy eyes never leaving her. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and the temperature in the attic seemed to drop, a cold draft swirling around her. Suddenly, the box slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The whispers stopped. And then, in the eerie silence that followed, she heard something else, a low, guttural growl, like an animal in pain. She whipped around, shining the flashlight in every direction, but there was nothing there. No movement, no sound, only the oppressive silence. And yet, the air felt thick with something unseen, something watching her from the corners of the room. The growl came again, this time louder, closer. Panicked, Emily bolted for the door, but when she tried to open it, the knob refused to turn. The door was stuck, as if something was holding it shut from the other side. She pushed harder, desperate to escape, but the door wouldn't budge. Behind her, the growl grew louder, turning into a snarl, then a scream. Emily spun around, her flashlight beam dancing across the walls. In the corner, a shadow moved. Slowly, deliberately. A figure stepped into the light, a man, or something that had once been a man. His skin was pale, stretched too tight over his bones, his eyes dark and hollow. His mouth hung open in a grotesque, silent scream, and his hands reached toward her with fingers like claws. Emily screamed, her voice lost in the storm outside as she shoved herself against the door, trying to force it open. The figure lurched forward, its breath coming in ragged gasps, as though it were starving for something. For her. With one final push, the door flew open and Emily stumbled into the hallway, her heart racing. The figure didn't follow her. It stayed in the attic, but she could still feel its presence like a dark cloud hanging over her head. She ran down the stairs, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the heavy rain outside. When she reached the front door, she flung it open and stepped out into the storm. The rain was cold, soaking her to the bone, but she didn't care. She didn't look back as she ran toward the woods, away from the house, away from whatever nightmare it had become. But as she ran, she heard the whispers again. Faint at first, but growing louder, rising above the storm. They were calling her name. And she knew deep down that no matter how far she ran, the house would always be there, waiting. The drizzle that followed rain had begun early that evening. A thin, lazy drizzle that clung to the windows and whispered against the roof like a warning. The town of Fairhill had long been known for its rains, gentle, constant, but harmless. But that night something changed. Michael Rowe, a 35-year-old freelance writer, had rented a quiet countryside cottage in Fairhill to escape city noise and meet his looming deadline. He liked isolation. Quiet helped him think. Or at least that's what he thought before the whispers began. His first night was peaceful. The patter of rain was almost therapeutic. But on the second night, something strange happened. Just past midnight, Michael heard what he thought was someone talking outside his window. He looked out. Nothing but darkness and rain. The next night, the voice came again. This time, clearer. "Let me in." He leaped from his bed and rushed to the window. No one. The front yard was empty. The gravel path slick with rain, trees bending under the weight of the drizzle. He told himself it was the wind. The fourth night was worse. Michael had dozed off on the couch when a sharp knock rattled the front door. He froze. 3 knocks. Then silence. He tiptoed to the door, held his breath, and peered through the peephole. No one. But when he opened the door, a single black feather lay on the welcome mat, soaked, glistening, and strangely warm. The next morning, he found wet footprints on the wooden floor, starting from the front door and ending at the fireplace. He hadn't left the door open. He hadn't walked around in wet shoes. The prints were small, barefoot, child-sized. That evening, he called the caretaker, Mrs. Adler, who lived in a house down the road. She was in her late 60s and knew every strange tale that Fairhill had buried under its fog. She arrived with 2 umbrellas and a face that looked like it had seen things it couldn't speak of. "You heard her," she said after he nervously recounted the incidents. "Heard who?" "The girl. From the storm." Michael chuckled uncomfortably. "Is this a local ghost story?" Mrs. Adler didn't smile. "She drowned here, in that very field, about 50 years ago." Michael waited for the punchline. None came. "She died waiting for her father to return," she added. "He never did, but she kept knocking." Michael thought she was insane. But then she pulled something from her coat pocket, a photo. A young girl in a raincoat standing in front of the same cottage. Her eyes were huge, almost too large for her face. She was holding a black umbrella. Michael shivered. That night, he stayed up. The rain didn't stop. At 2:13 a.m., there was a knock. 3 slow taps. He didn't move. Then the voice again, right by the window. "Let me in." This time it wasn't faint. It was right there, right outside. Michael grabbed his phone and hit record. "Who's there?" he shouted. No reply. The next morning, he played back the audio. There were no words, just a faint, high-pitched sobbing and then a whisper. "You said you'd wait." The next evening, the power went out. Only the fireplace and lightning lit the cottage. The rain grew violent, slapping the windows like it wanted to get in. Then he heard it, footsteps upstairs. He hadn't been up there in days. He grabbed the flashlight and climbed slowly. Each step groaned like a scream. The door to the guest room creaked open on its own. Inside, the girl stood facing the window. Her raincoat was dripping. Her feet were black with mud. Michael's flashlight flickered. When it steadied, she was gone. In her place, the black umbrella folded and resting on the bed, Michael ran. But every road from the cottage curved back to it. It was like the world outside had vanished. Just rain, trees, and the winding gravel path that led nowhere but home. He locked himself inside, burned the feather, burned the umbrella. But at 3:07 a.m. she knocked again and whispered, "Burn me too." The final straw came when he found his manuscript erased. Every page of his novel replaced with a single sentence, "Let me in." Over and over, he tried to leave, tried to scream, but the rain muffled everything. He decided to take his own life. But when he went to the attic with the rope, he found something else instead. A journal, leather-bound, water-damaged. Inside were pages of someone else's handwriting, entries that began the same way he had. "I came to write. Now I can't leave." The last page was smeared with blood. It read, "If you hear her voice, it's already too late." Michael was never seen again. The cottage stands empty now, but every rainy night, passers-by say they see a girl in a raincoat standing at the window. Sometimes she's holding a feather, sometimes an umbrella, and sometimes she's just knocking, waiting for someone who said they'd come back. The rain at Black Hollow Road. It was nearing midnight when Ethan and Melissa took the wrong turn. They were on their way back from a weekend cabin trip, tired and quiet in the car. Rain began drumming on the windshield as the GPS recalculated for the third time. "We should have turned left," Melissa muttered. "I did," Ethan replied, squinting at the map. But it showed nothing now, just blank green. A crooked wooden sign flashed past. Black Hollow Road. The road narrowed quickly, trees arching overhead like ribs. The rain fell harder, hammering the roof. A branch scraped the side of the car. "We should turn around," Melissa said, nervous. But the road was too narrow. Then, a figure appeared in the headlights. Ethan slammed the brakes. They skidded but didn't hit anything. Melissa opened her mouth to scream but froze. There was no one there, except a soaking wet child's shoe in the middle of the road. A mile down, they saw a house. Old, Victorian. Its porch light flickered, the only source of light for miles. Desperate, they stopped. Melissa knocked. The door creaked open slowly. The house smelled like wet wood and rot. "Hello?" Ethan called. No answer. They stepped in. The door slammed shut behind them. They found a dusty study lit by a dying fireplace. A journal lay open on a desk. Melissa picked it up and read aloud. "The rain never stops. It feeds her. If you see her shadow, it's already too late. She waits behind the mirror." A sudden clap of thunder made them both jump. That's when Melissa noticed it, the giant mirror on the far wall. It dripped with water, not on the surface, from inside. They moved closer. Ethan wiped the glass. Behind the mirror, a girl stood in a white dress, soaked, her head tilted unnaturally. She didn't mimic their movements. She grinned. Suddenly, the lights died. When they turned their phones on, the mirror was shattered, and in the shards, the girl was gone. They ran upstairs. Every door they tried led to the same hallway, looping endlessly. Rain poured harder outside, almost horizontal now. Ethan opened a bedroom door and screamed. Inside was a wet crib, filled with moldy stuffed animals and children's bones. The window blew open. A small handprint appeared on the inside glass. Melissa found it first, a door behind a loose wallpaper panel. Stairs led down into darkness. From below came the sound of dripping and crying. Ethan tried to stop her, but Melissa descended. In the basement, she found a rocking chair. Rocking on its own, a voice whispered from behind her, "You're her now." She turned. The girl from the mirror was inches from her face. Ethan found Melissa sitting still at the base of the stairs, staring blankly. She didn't speak, just smiled slowly. From that moment, she acted strangely. Her eyes too wide, her voice too calm. The rain outside never stopped. That night, Ethan heard something crawling in the walls. He found the mirror again, and in the reflection, he saw Melissa behind him, holding a knife. But when he turned, she was asleep. At dawn, Ethan carried Melissa out of the house. The car still worked. They drove for hours, but the road never ended. Every turn led them back to the same place. Eventually, they saw the wooden sign again. Black Hollow Road. Melissa whispered, "She won't let us leave." Ethan woke one morning to find the car empty. Melissa was gone. Outside, the rain had stopped. In the back seat sat a new journal, open to a fresh page. "She lives through the ones who find her. I can't stop her now. I can only warn you." At the bottom was scrawled, "Knock twice, then run." Ethan turned. The mirror stood beside the road in the trees. From behind the glass, Melissa knocked once, then again. Knock, knock! Rain poured like sheets of glass as Leah drove through the countryside, her GPS flickering. She was alone, far from home, the storm swallowing the road ahead. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the car sputtered and died. Dead battery. No signal. No nearby houses. Just woods. Then came the first knock, not from outside, but from the trunk. Leah froze. Another knock, louder, insistent. She stepped out, drenched instantly, the flashlight on her phone barely cutting through the mist. She walked to the back of the car. Silence. She slowly lifted the trunk. Empty, except wet footprints inside. Human, facing inward. She slammed it shut and got back inside, heart pounding. Then came the second knock, this time on the passenger window. She turned. Nothing there. Rain. Darkness. She locked the doors, tried calling again. No signal. The windshield fogged up. She wiped it and found a message written in the condensation. Let me out. Her breath caught. Then, the radio turned on by itself. Static. Then a voice, whispering, "She's almost free." Leah screamed and tried to start the car. Nothing. Suddenly, the back seat light flicked on. She turned slowly. A soaking wet girl sat there, smiling with cracked lips and hollow eyes. You opened the trunk. The car doors unlocked on their own. Rain poured harder, and outside in the woods, dozens of pale figures stood watching. Knock, 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 all around her. The passenger in the rain. It was a stormy night when Daniel picked up the hitchhiker. She stood on the roadside in a red raincoat, hood drawn low, thumb out, soaked. It was 2 a.m., the road deserted. He almost drove past, but something in his gut made him slow down. She got in without a word. Daniel glanced at her, pale, shivering, long black hair clinging to her face. She smelled like wet leaves and cold air. "Where you headed?" he asked. She pointed forward. "All right, no problem." They drove in silence. The windshield wipers thumped like a heartbeat. Rain hammered the roof. After a mile, Daniel noticed something odd. Her feet were bare, covered in mud. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. He flicked on the dome light. She wasn't there. Just a puddle of rainwater on the passenger seat. Daniel slammed the brakes. The car skidded, stopping in the middle of the highway. Breathing hard, he looked around. Nothing. Then, tap, 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 from the backseat window. He turned. The girl was sitting in the rear seat now, face pressed to the glass, eyes pitch black, grinning. He floored the gas. She was gone again, but every few miles she reappeared, sometimes in the mirror, sometimes on the roadside again, sometimes whispering in the radio static, "Take me home." He finally reached a gas station, blinding lights, people, safety. He ran inside, shaking, explaining to the clerk. The clerk listened, nodded slowly, and pointed to the wall and where an old newspaper clipping was framed. "Local girl killed in rainstorm 1993, seen by dozens over the decades, always barefoot, always looking for a ride." Daniel turned pale. Outside, the girl stood by his car again, this time smiling wider, waiting. The last stop. It was nearly midnight when Rachel boarded the last bus out of town. The storm had already begun, fat droplets smacking the pavement like nails from the sky. She pulled her coat tighter and climbed aboard, shaking rain from her hair. Only 3 other passengers sat scattered through the dimly lit bus, their faces barely visible beneath flickering ceiling lights. She took a seat near the back. The bus hissed and groaned as it rolled back into the night. Raindrops painted the windows in twisting rivers. Outside, the world was a blur of shadows and water. Streetlights glowed like dying embers. Rachel plugged in her headphones, but the sound never played. Instead, a whisper crackled through the silence. "We never left." She yanked the earbuds out, heart pounding, looked around. The passengers hadn't moved. None of them blinked. The bus passed the same gas station twice, the same tree with broken limbs, then the same billboard, again and again. Rachel stood and approached the driver. But where the driver should have been, there was only an empty seat and wet handprints on the steering wheel. The bus was driving itself. One of the passengers turned his head. His skin was pale and sagging, eyes hollow black pits. He smiled. Another did the same. They rose slowly with impossible stiffness. Rachel ran. The exit doors wouldn't open. Outside, the rain poured harder, almost screaming against the glass. Inside, the dead whispered, "One more seat left." She banged on the glass, screamed, but the streets outside were empty. Every time she turned back, the bus looked longer, darker, filled with more shadows. And then she saw it. Her own body, still in the back seat, staring out the window, unmoving. The last stop never came. The bus still drives through the stormy night, picking up the lost, the lonely, the ones who board in the rain and never question the route. So if you ever ride a bus on a rainy night, look twice at the passengers. You might already be part of the route. Knocking in the rain. Maya had just moved into the old hill cottage. She wanted solitude, peace, and rain. The locals warned her, though. If you hear knocking during a storm, don't answer. Don't even look. She laughed it off. The first storm came 2 weeks in. Midnight thunder, relentless rain. Then the knocking began. 3 knocks, steady. Not at the door, at the window. She lived on the 2nd floor. Frozen in bed, she whispered, "Just the wind." Then again, knock, knock, knock. This time at the bathroom mirror. She didn't move, didn't blink. The knocking stopped. She fell asleep eventually. But in the morning, handprints were on the inside of the mirror. Small, childlike, wet. Night 2. Another storm. This time she locked every door and window. 14 a.m. A slow creak. Her closet door opened by itself. She held her breath. Then, knock, knock, knock. Inside the closet. She screamed, ran to the hallway, only to find the main door wide open, rain blowing inside. At the end of the hallway stood a little boy, barefoot, soaked, head tilted. "You didn't answer last time," he said. "Now I came in." The lights died. The hallway vanished in blackness. She backed into the bedroom and slammed the door, only to hear the same 3 knocks now from inside her own room, behind her. They found her a day later, alive but broken. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, just stared at the mirror, whispering, "He only knocks for the ones who live alone." Now on rainy nights, someone knocks at her hospital window from the 3rd floor. The girl at the edge of the rain. It always rained at Briarfield, but only at night. Locals said the rain was cursed. It brought her. Eli, a photographer from the city, didn't believe in curses. He came to document the rainstorms, drawn by eerie tales of a ghost girl who appeared only during thunderstorms. He set up his gear inside the old Briarfield Inn, now abandoned. The rain began at 11:06 p.m. on the dot. As he adjusted the lens toward the window, he saw her, a girl in white, standing still at the edge of the forest. She wasn't soaked by the rain, not even a drop. Eli snapped a photo. She vanished. Minutes later, she was closer, now on the road leading to the inn. Eli lowered his camera. She didn't walk. She blinked forward. Each time the thunder clapped, she was closer. In the camera's lens, empty road. Naked eye, she was right there. The rain intensified. Water began to leak inside, but only in the hallway. The air turned cold. His camera stopped working. He backed into the main room. Suddenly, the lights from his gear flickered. In a flash of lightning, she was inside, still dripping dry, eyes empty, mouth twitching, as if trying to smile but didn't remember how. Then she whispered, "Do you want to see where the rain really falls?" Everything went dark. The next morning, a hiker found Eli's gear, untouched, still recording. Only one photo was saved. The girl, inches from the lens, smiling, her hand against the glass, and behind her, an endless wall of black rain. Eli was never found. But if you stay in Briarfield on a rainy night, you might hear a camera click in the distance. The rain doesn't knock. When Jenna moved into her late aunt's cottage in Raven Hollow, she was told one rule. If it's raining, don't answer the door, no matter who knocks. She thought it was an old superstition, until the first storm. It started softly, just a drizzle tapping the rooftop. Jenna curled up on the couch, tea in hand, reading through her aunt's journal. Most pages were about gardening and village gossip. Then she found a line written over and over, "The rain doesn't knock." Thunder growled, the lights flickered, and then 3 sharp knocks at the door. Jenna froze. No one should be out there. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. She crept to the door, heart racing, and peeked through the peephole. No one. She backed away. Another knock. Louder. And wet footprints began appearing beneath the door, from the inside. She ran to the back door. Knock, knock, knock. It followed her. Suddenly, the rain grew louder, not outside, but inside. From the ceiling, droplets began falling. In the kitchen sink, rain. From her bedroom closet, dripping. Then she heard it. A voice outside, whispering her name, over and over. She covered her ears. It kept whispering. It knew her. Knew she was alone. Jenna tried to leave, but every window was now showing rain. Not outside, but behind the glass. On the inside. And shadows behind them. She screamed. The lights died. And then the knocking came from every door, every window, every wall. One final whisper before it went silent. The rain doesn't knock, but I do. In the morning, the rain stopped. Jenna was gone, but the cottage door now opens by itself, only when it rains. Morning, rain stopped. Jenna gone, open by itself. Room 103. It was past 1 a.m. when Daniel's car broke down on a desolate mountain road. Rain poured in sheets, turning the windshield into a gray blur. No cell signal, no traffic. Only the winding road and towering trees, bending in the wind like watchers. He saw the neon glow just ahead, Everpine Motel, vacancy. Old, faded, but shelter. He grabbed his duffel and ran inside, water soaking through his clothes. The lobby was small, musty, and empty, until a man emerged from behind the desk, eyes too wide, smile too forced. Only one room left, he said. Room 103. The hallway was lined with peeling wallpaper and old portraits of grim-faced people. Room 103 smelled of mildew and something sour. He locked the door, tossed his bag on the chair, and collapsed on the bed. Thunder cracked outside. The rain grew louder, then softer, then loud again, as if something was brushing the windows. Then he noticed it. A second chair in the corner, facing the bed. Empty. When he turned away from it, he felt the pressure of eyes. At 2:37 a.m., he woke to the sound of the chair creaking. Slowly. Creak. Creak. Daniel sat up, staring through the dark. Lightning flashed. There was a woman in the chair, pale, hair soaked, mouth open in a silent scream. When the room went dark again, she was gone. He didn't sleep. The rain didn't stop. Every time the lightning flashed, she was closer, first by the chair, then beside the bed, then at the foot of it. He whispered to himself, "It's just my mind." But then the TV turned on by itself, static. A voice crackled through, "Room 103, it's always full." He rushed to the door. It was locked. He yanked and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. A wet hand slid around the edge of the bathroom door. Then her face. Twisted, dripping, screaming without sound. When morning came, the door swung open. Daniel ran. He didn't look back. But later, as he sped away from the motel, he checked the rearview mirror. There she was, in the back seat, still soaked, still watching. Everpine Motel still offers one room, room 103. But once you're in, you never really check out. Lena always loved old houses, so when she found a worn-down Victorian home for sale at an unbelievably low price in the outskirts of Pine Hollow, she couldn't resist. The first night she moved in, it rained. Heavy droplets slapped the windows, and the wind howled through unseen cracks. While unpacking in the living room, she heard it, a soft tapping beneath the floor. At first, she thought it was the old pipes settling, but then came a whisper. Very faint, very deliberate. Lena. She froze, dropping the box she was carrying. The sound was gone. She laughed nervously. Maybe the loneliness was getting to her. Over the next few days, the house grew stranger. Lights flickered randomly. The radio turned on by itself, playing old, scratchy tunes from the 1940s. Sometimes Lena swore she saw shadows darting just at the corner of her vision. One night, while reading in bed, she heard it again. The tapping, directly beneath her bed this time. Followed by a whisper so cold it felt like fingers brushing her neck. "Come down." Trembling, Lena got up, determined to prove to herself there was nothing there. She lifted the rug in her bedroom and noticed an outline of a trap door. Hidden. She pried it open. A steep wooden staircase led down into darkness. Against all instinct, she grabbed her flashlight and descended. The air below was frigid and smelled of damp earth. The flashlight flickered as she reached the bottom. A narrow dirt tunnel stretched ahead, the walls slick with moisture. Whispers floated around her now, indistinct and overlapping, as if dozens of voices spoke at once. She wanted to turn back, but something pulled her forward. At the end of the tunnel, she found a small underground room. Inside were dozens of child-sized chairs arranged in a circle. In the center, an ancient rocking horse, its paint peeling, rocked slowly back and forth. The whispers grew louder. She stepped closer and noticed something horrifying. Tiny handprints stained the walls, some fresh, some still moving. As she backed away, a hand shot out from the dirt floor, grabbing her ankle. She screamed, kicking free, and fled back up the stairs. When she slammed the trapdoor shut behind her, the floor seemed to pulse beneath her feet, angry. She packed her things that night, determined to leave, but the house didn't want her to. Every door she tried was locked, every window stuck. The walls themselves seemed to stretch, narrowing the halls, trapping her. She ran from room to room, heart hammering, until she ended up back in her bedroom. And there, standing by the open trapdoor, was a figure. Small, pale, eyes sunken deep into a face too young to be so twisted. The child smiled, revealing rows of broken teeth. "Stay with us," it whispered. The walls bled. The floorboards cracked open. Hands reached out. Lena tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw was the pale child reaching for her face. The house was listed again a month later, even cheaper this time, waiting. It started the night the storm came. Aaron lived alone at the edge of Millersfield, surrounded by endless wheat fields. The old farmhouse creaked and moaned under the weight of the howling wind. As the rain hammered the roof, he heard a knock, not at the door, at the window, 3 sharp taps. Aaron hesitated. His nearest neighbor was miles away. He approached the window slowly, heart thudding. Nothing there, just the waving wheat and sheets of rain. He chalked it up to a branch or debris and went back to his chair. But the knocking came again. This time at the kitchen window, then the living room, then the back door. Always 3 sharp taps. When he mustered the courage to open the door, nobody was there, only the storm. He bolted the door and went to bed, convincing himself it was just the weather. At 3:12 a.m., the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. He heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging footsteps. Aaron grabbed his flashlight. The hallway was empty, but muddy footprints stained the wooden floor, leading toward his bedroom. Panicking, he locked his door, pressed his back against it, and listened. The footsteps stopped right outside. 3 knocks on the door. He screamed, but the storm swallowed the sound. After a long, agonizing silence, he heard faint breathing, low, raspy, inches from him. He didn't sleep that night. When morning came, he found the footprints were gone. He left for work early, trying to shake off the unease, but it followed him. That night, as he lay trying to sleep, he heard something whisper his name from under the bed. He didn't dare look. Over the next days, things worsened. His reflection in the mirror started smiling when he didn't. Objects shifted places when he wasn't looking. At night, he saw the outline of a figure standing in the fields, staring at the house, always the same distance away, no matter which window he looked from. He called the sheriff. When they arrived, they found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. They said it was probably stress. Aaron knew better. The thing wasn't trying to break in. It was already inside. One night, he woke up to the feeling of someone sitting on his chest. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. In the faint moonlight, he saw it. A hollow-eyed figure, face sagging like melting wax, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. It leaned closer until he could feel its cold breath in his ear. "Let me stay." He blacked out. When he woke, he was on the floor, bruises in the shape of fingers around his throat. Aaron packed his bags. He didn't care about the house anymore. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of the farmhouse in the rearview mirror. Standing on the roof, silhouetted against the pale dawn, was the figure, watching. It never knocked again. It didn't need to. It was already part of him. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip. Danny, Lila, and Sam had driven deep into the countryside to find a legendary spot, a hidden lake that locals whispered about but never visited. Silent Lake, it was called. No one knew why. When they arrived, they found the place untouched. The water was glassy, dark, and so still it looked like black ice. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to die the moment they stepped out of the car. It was unnerving. They pitched their tents anyway. That night, around the fire, Sam told a story he had heard. Long ago, a town stood here. One night, everyone vanished. Only the lake remained. They say the lake keeps their souls. The fire flickered. Something splashed in the water. They turned, but there was nothing. Just ripples spreading across the surface. Lila laughed nervously. Probably a fish, she said, but no fish lived there. At midnight, Danny woke to the sound of soft singing, a woman's voice sweet and broken. It was coming from the lake. Drawn by it, he stumbled out of his tent. The others were gone, or asleep. He wasn't sure. By the lakeshore, he saw a figure standing ankle-deep in the water. A woman in a tattered white dress. Her face was hidden by wet, matted hair. She sang without pause. Hypnotized, Danny stepped forward. The water was ice cold. When he reached out to touch her shoulder, she turned. Her face was hollow, her mouth a black void. She screamed, a soundless, shattering cry, and grabbed him. The world twisted. He fell into darkness. In the morning, Lila and Sam found Danny's tent empty. No sign of struggle. Just wet footprints leading from the tent to the lake. They searched the water but found no body. They called for him, screamed until their voices were raw. But the lake remained silent. That night, Lila heard Danny calling her name from the darkness. She ran out of her tent, only to find footprints leading toward the water again. This time, 2 sets, one hers, one not. She backed away, but a hand shot out from the water and seized her ankle, pulling her under. Sam ran after her scream but found only ripples, and in the reflection of the lake, he saw all 3 of them. Himself, Lila, Danny, standing beneath the surface, staring up at him, mouths open in a silent plea. He fled. He ran through the woods, through the endless dark, but no matter how far he went, he always ended up back at the lake. Silent, watching, waiting. The lake never let go. Now, if you find Silent Lake and listen closely at midnight, you'll hear the faintest singing. And if you answer it, you'll never leave. When the old Holloway house went up for sale, Ellie knew she had to have it. She loved abandoned places, and this one was perfect. A crumbling Victorian mansion hidden behind an overgrown orchard at the edge of a forgotten town. The realtor warned her, no one stays there long. Strange things happen. Ellie laughed it off. She liked strange. The day she moved in, everything felt wrong. The house creaked constantly, even when the air was still. Doors she had closed would be wide open moments later. Mirrors fogged up with breath marks, even when she was alone. At first, she thought it was just an old house settling. But at night, when the moon rose and the orchard's twisted trees scraped against the windows, she heard whispering from the walls, low, urgent voices she couldn't quite understand. On the third night, she found a door in the cellar she hadn't noticed before. A narrow wooden door, bolted shut with rusty chains. Scratched into the wood were the words, "Do not open." Naturally, Ellie wanted to open it. She fetched a hammer and broke the lock. The door swung open with a groan that sounded almost human. Behind it was a steep staircase spiraling down into darkness. The air that rushed out smelled of damp earth and something. Rotting. Holding a flashlight, she descended. The steps went on forever. At the bottom, she found a vast, circular room lined with mirrors. But the mirrors didn't reflect her. They showed other versions of the house, decayed, burning, flooded, each one worse than the last. And in each mirror, figures watched her. Faceless, shifting things made of smoke and shadow. She turned to flee, but the staircase was gone. Only a blank wall remained. Panic clawed at her. From the mirrors, the figures began stepping out one by one, surrounding her. Their whispers filled the air, thick and suffocating. "You opened the door. You belong to us now. Stay forever." Ellie ran, but the room twisted and changed with every step. No exit, no escape. Finally, exhausted, she collapsed in the center of the room. The figures closed in, their hands cold and clammy. The last thing she saw was her own reflection. But it wasn't hers anymore. It smiled cruelly, waving goodbye. When the police came weeks later, responding to neighbors' complaints about the smell, they found the house abandoned. Only Ellie's shoes remained by the cellar door. The door was sealed again, chains newer and stronger. But sometimes, on windless nights, if you stand in the orchard and listen carefully, you can hear a faint tapping from beneath the ground, like fingernails against glass, like someone trying to get out. Everyone in town knew the story of Camp Wrenwood. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since the incident no one wanted to talk about. But when Jason and his 3 friends found an old brochure in the library, promising pristine lakes, lush forests, and endless fun, they decided it would be the perfect place to camp for the weekend. They should have stayed away. The first sign something was wrong came the moment they crossed the rusted gate. The air was heavy, too still, as if the forest was holding its breath. The once colorful cabins sagged with mold and rot, their windows shattered like jagged teeth. But it was the silence that unnerved them most. No birds, no insects, nothing. They chose the least decayed cabin and set up camp. That night, sitting around a weak fire, they heard it. The faint sound of children laughing. At first, they thought it was the wind. But when they listened closer, the laughter grew louder, closer. Footsteps crunched in the undergrowth, running circles around them. But when they shined their flashlights into the woods, nothing. The next morning, their food was gone. Their gear was shredded as if torn apart by small, furious hands. Scratched into the dirt outside the cabin was a single word: stay. Jason wanted to leave immediately, but the others convinced him to wait until sunrise. That night, the true horror began. The air inside the cabin turned icy, their breath came out in misty clouds, and the whispers started. From the corners of the room, under the bunks, inside the walls, soft, childlike voices chanting in unison, "Stay and play, stay and play." Something scuttled across the floor, fast and unseen. The door slammed shut on its own, trapping them inside. Panic exploded. They banged on the walls, tried to pry the door open, but it wouldn't budge. In the darkness, small hands grabbed at their ankles, their clothes. Scratches appeared on their arms and faces, as if by invisible nails. One by one, Jason's friends were dragged into the shadows, screaming. When Jason finally broke a window and crawled out, he saw them. Dozens of pale children standing just beyond the firelight. Their eyes were hollow black pits, their mouths stretched into grotesque, unnatural smiles, and they were waiting. Jason ran into the woods, blindly stumbling through thorns and mud. He didn't stop until he reached the gate. But when he turned back, Camp Wrenwood was gone. Only dense, endless forest remained. When he returned with police the next day, there was no sign the camp had ever existed, just an empty clearing. And Jason? He never spoke again. Only sat in his room, whispering 2 words over and over: stay and play, stay and play. Everyone in Mill Creek had heard about the house on Willow Lane, the one with the sagging roof, boarded windows, and the crooked, rusted mailbox that simply read, "The Crawfords." No one lived there. No one even walked past it after dark. Some said it was cursed. Some said something worse lived inside. When 17-year-old Ellie and her cousin Mark dared each other to explore it one stormy summer night, it felt exciting, dangerous. They thought it would be a laugh. They were wrong. The moment they stepped onto the porch, the door creaked open by itself. The smell hit them. Mildew, rotting wood, something else underneath it all. Something metallic. Blood. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of decaying furniture, peeling wallpaper, and water-stained ceilings. A coldness clung to the air despite the thick, humid summer night outside. They wandered deeper, laughing nervously, their flashlights flickering. But the laughter died when they found the first room. It was a child's bedroom, untouched by time. Tiny shoes lined up neatly by a tiny bed. A cracked porcelain doll sat upright on the pillow, its glass eyes staring straight at them. Then the doll smiled. They ran. Down the twisting hallways, deeper into the house. Every door they passed slammed shut behind them. The lights of their flashlights began to dim, no matter how hard they hit them. Mark tried the front door. It wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to breathe, in and out, with a wet, sickening sound. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, just soft rustling in the dark, but they grew louder, harsher. A single voice rose above the others, high and childlike. "You shouldn't be here." Ellie and Mark stumbled into what must have once been a living room. At the center was a large mirror, its surface cloudy with age. But when they looked into it, they didn't see themselves. They saw the Crawfords. A family of 5, standing stiff and silent. The mother held a carving knife. The father grinned horribly, his face split ear to ear. The children had no eyes. One by one, they lifted their hands and pointed at Ellie and Mark. The glass of the mirror rippled like water. Hands reached through, clawing at them. Ellie screamed as cold fingers brushed her skin. Mark grabbed her and they bolted up the stairs, looking for any way out. At the end of the hallway was an attic door. They yanked it open and scrambled up. Inside the attic, dozens of tiny coffins lined the walls. Each coffin had a name. Each name was carved into the wood, scratched deep and angry. The last 2 coffins were open, freshly waiting, and the names on them were Ellie and Mark. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut. The only light came from the flash of lightning through a cracked window. And in that brief flicker, they saw the Crawfords, standing at the top of the stairs, moving closer. Ellie smashed the window with her flashlight. Mark pushed her through first, then followed. They landed hard on the wet grass outside. When they turned back, the house was dark and still, too still. They ran all the way home without looking back. The next morning, when they told the police, they were laughed at. There was no house on Willow Lane, they said. There had never been. All that stood there was an empty lot overgrown with weeds and moss. But that night, as Ellie lay in bed, she heard it, a faint knock at her window. When she looked, she saw 3 pale children smiling up at her, their mouths stretched wide, their eyeless faces pressed against the glass, waiting.